Good evening and welcome to the Myrna Loy. I'm Krys Holmes, the director, and this is the Myrna Soundstage presented by AARP Montana. And we have tremendous gratitude to express for AARP Montana for their partnership, to you in the audience for being here, to everyone online for watching. I also want to say a big thank you to a couple of our other sponsors, Superior Heating and Cooling in Helena, who replaced our furnaces and gave us an air purification system, so we have certified purified air here in our theater. We want to thank our friends at Collision Pro, the body shop in Helena that supports the arts, and we want to thank Treasure State Internet and Telegraph, who give us our internet, allowing us to bring these amazing musicians and performers out to you and the world. Thank you for being here tonight, and I really want you to pay attention to the other sponsors that will appear, and also to remember that the Myrna Loy in Little Helena, Montana is a nonprofit arts organization bringing beautiful, amazing, creative, and multidisciplinary arts events to students and to the community and to Helena in very trying times. But if you're in the arts business, it's always trying times. If you would like to donate to support the Myrna Soundstage, helping us celebrate Montana musicians and the Montana Soundstage or soundtrack to the world, please donate through Venmo, through PayPal, or go to themyrnaloy.com, click on the upper right where it says donate, and give us some love. We are here to celebrate to the world the creative work that's going on in beautiful Big Sky country. Tonight we have some traditional Montana performers to share with you. We hope you enjoy Brigid and Johnny Reedy and cowboy poet Randy Rieman. Please support the Myrna Loy, and if you're watching from somewhere else, themyrnaloy.com, donate to the Myrna Loy, or donate to your own local arts center wherever you live. Thank you, and enjoy the show.
A 1, 2, 3, 4. I can't dance, got ants in my pants, ants in my pants. I can't dance, I got ants in my pants. Oh, there's a cat in the neighborhood, Better watch that cat, 'cause you ain't no good. What'd I do? 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 Little-I-da-do. I can't dance, got ants in my pants, ants in my pants. I can't dance, I got ants in my pants. Ants in my pants, I can't dance. I got ants in my pants. Oh, see that kitty in the neighborhood, in my neighborhood. Better watch that cat. Ra-da-doo, ra-da-doo, wa-da-doo-lee-la-da-da-da. Hey, I can't dance, I got ants in my pants. I can't dance, I got ants in my pants. Oh, I can't dance, I got those ants in my pants. I can't dance, I got ants in my pants. Let's throw a party, baby, spread good cheer. You bring the hot dogs, now bring the beer. Rose, oh, see, oh, my, here's the reason why. Oh, I can't dance, I got those ants in my pants. I can't dance, I got ants in my pants. I can't dance, got ants in my pants, ants in my pants. I can't dance, I got ants in my pants. Oh, there's a cat in the neighborhood, Better watch that cat, 'cause it ain't no good. Why-da-do, 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 why-da-do-lee-la-la-day. I can't dance, I got ants in my pants. I can't dance, I got ants, ants in my pants, ants.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the Myrna Soundstage. I'm here with Johnny Reedy, Brigid Reedy, and Randy Rieman. I'm going to indulge myself here, and I usually do not do this how you met, when you met thing. But I'm going to ask Brigid Reedy if she remembers when we played together the first time.
I'm pretty sure up in the mountains at Good Medicine. Mm-hmm. And that's years and years of this going on. There's a great tradition here of all these wonderful fiddlers picnics throughout the summer, and Good Medicine was one of my favorites. Since I was tiny, I would play for probably 18 hours straight, have to be reminded to eat, and it'd be with wonderful friends, and just until the sun goes down and way after that. And sometimes when I was finally dragged off to sleep, I could still hear, like, reverberating through the ground and up into my chest, the bass, boom, 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 off into sleep, and wake up, and some of those old-time fiddle guys would just be still sitting there, like, as if it was just as regenerative to just keep bowing that easy way, and they didn't need to sleep at all, you know. So that was a pretty important part of my childhood.
Well, I remember playing with you for the first time. And I remember us going off by ourselves, just violin and bass. And your mom was there because she has to be there to make sure that nobody's a creep. And she was standing, though, far enough away. And I threw you some of my tunes that you'd never heard before. And you're about 12. And pretty soon people are going to have to, like, quit talking about that you're young. Like pretty soon people.
Because I'm actually 85. Nobody knows.
on the inside, on the inside, you're 85. But pretty soon we'll have to stop saying that you're great for your age, and we'll just have to start saying you're great. But you're about 12, and you set right in on songs you'd never heard. You have to know how to do it, and she knew how to do it. That's what I remember. You.
Yes.
My brilliant Johnny.
Johnny, you were about, you were shorter than a guitar.
Well, he was but a babe in arms.
The guitar was like, you were playing a guitar like this. And you had about 3 chords at the time. And then I met you again 3 years later, and you had all of the jazz chords. So I never asked this kind of question, but how'd you learn to do all that at a young age? Like, did you take lessons? Did you watch on the YouTubes? How did you figure out how to play all this jazz stuff?
He went to the Crossroads.
Well, yeah. Well, what can I say? I mean,
did he sell his soul to the devil?
I don't like to talk about it. But a nice little story I like to tell. So just like Brigid was saying, with these great fiddle congregations and of this music here in Montana, there's this great music camp up in Monarch, Montana.
Oh, yeah, I know about that, yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And so they get these great musicians from all over the place. And I was thinking, because I had learned some chords from Daddy-O, from my dad, so I had a pretty good idea of kind of what I wanted to do. And then it was like, bring him to the camp. And there's this great guitarist, Mike Dowling, who's just like this great swing guitarist and does all this stuff. And so I was there. I took one of his classes for a week or so.
Everyone else, might I add, was in the 45 to 65 range, and here is 8-year-old Johnny with perfect rhythm and just laser focused on Mike Dowling, soaking in everything.
He just got this system system of swing chords and this approach to all of this stuff that just completely clicked for me. That just after a week, I would just go home and I could just noodle on all this stuff. I would get better. I could come back next year. So there was just like most of all my everything was just a week or two, every year.
Cumulative, a week this summer, a week the next summer.
Yeah.
But then it just continued to get him rolling so that he could hear things and apply them immediately.
To the point when it could just spread to everything. And that's been really great.
Because I took a guitar lesson one time, and it didn't work.
Oh, no.
1, 2, ho, ho! Hold that tiger, 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 poke 'em, kick 'em and salt 'em. Hold that tiger, 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 don't let him go. Hold that tiger, that's Tiger Ray. Hey Johnny, where's that tiger?
I don't know,
Have you seen that tiger?
I haven't seen him anywhere.
Where's that tiger? Where till I get you no good tiger? Where's that tiger? Here's that tiger. Where's that tiger? Here's that tiger. Where's that tiger? Here's that tiger. Where's that tiger? No, 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 no.
Randy, do you know these people?
Yes, I do.
How do you know these people?
We first met at Elko at the National Cowboy Poetry Gathering, and I've watched them since they were quite young and watched them mature as people and as musicians, and it's just been a wonderful time. Yeah.
I want to ask you about cowboy poetry because I don't know anything about cowboys or cows or horses or cowboy poetry.
Perfect.
Which is a nice place to be when you're asking somebody a question.
You bet.
How did you get into it? What do you like about it? This is a three-part question.
Okay.
And what do you see your role in it?
Well, I was born with a cowboy fetish, I think. Just anything cowboy was my interest, even from a really young age. And my granddad he was a Midwest farmer when I knew him, but he was a German immigrant who worked as a cowboy at one point in his career before he became a farmer. And I had these photographs in my life of my granddad horseback, had a pair of spurs and a pair of wrist cuffs that were his. And so just anything that had anything to do with cowboy, I was interested in it. And in studying and reading Western literature, I ran across lots of cowboy poems. For example of the great Western artist Charles Russell. Charlie wrote a lot of cowboy poetry. And so I just got more and more interested in the West and made a study of it and found these great out-of-print books of Western verse. And for a lot of folks who might be familiar with Robert Service's poetry, storytelling, rhymed and metered poetry, but might not know about cowboy poetry, that's the closest poet of popularity that I think maybe reflects the cowboy world too, is it's rhymed and metered storytelling. And so fast forward years, in 1985, they had the first National Cowboy Poetry Gathering. Wasn't actually called that then, it was just a cowboy poetry gathering. And some folklorists, a guy named Jim Griffith and a man named Hal Cannon and Liz Deer from here in Great Falls.
I've met Hal. He's a songwriter himself.
He is, great musician too. Mm-hmm. They knew about this body of work that was birthed by the cowboy culture and the ranch culture. And so they said, wouldn't it be great to have a celebration of that? And that's when it all started, and that's about the time I got involved with the public presentation of these cowboy poems. In 1915, a man named Charles Badger Clark published a book of cowboy poetry called Sun and Saddle Leather. And that was 106 years ago, and that book is still considered one of the best examples of a collection of cowboy poetry. And the very first poem in that book is a poem called Ridin', and this is it. There's some that love the city, grass that's curried, smooth and green, theaters and strangling collars, wagons run by gasoline. But for me, it's horse and saddle every day without a change, and the desert sun a-blazing on 100 miles of range. Riding, just a riding, desert rippling in the sun, mountains blue along the skyline. I don't envy anyone when I'm riding. When my feet are in the stirrups and my hoss is on the bust and his hooves are flashing lightning from a cloud of golden dust, and the bawling of the cattle is a-drifting down the wind, well, a finer life than riding would be mighty hard to find. Riding, just a riding, splitting long cracks through the air, stirring up a baby cyclone, tearing through the prickly pear. Just a riding. I don't need an art exhibit when the sunset does her best, painting everlasting glory on the mountains to the west. And your opera looks plumb foolish when the night bird sings his tune and the desert's silver mounted by the touches of the moon. And I'm riding, just a riding. Who could envy kings or czars when the coyotes down the canyon are singing to the stars? and you're riding. When my trail on earth is ended and my final bacon's curled and I'm called away up yonder to that home ranch of the world, I don't want no harp, no halo, robes, or other fancy things. Let me ride the starry ranges on a blood bay hoss with wings. Riding. Just riding nothing I'd like half as well as rounding up the sinners that have wandered out of hell. If I'm riding. Charles Badger Clark, 1915. Sometime later, another fella started kind of debuting his poems, and his name was Bruce Kiskadden, and he was a real multifaceted guy. He wrote over 500 poems that we know of, and he wrote a great piece I'd like to do now called The Creak of the Leather. And this poem was written, I'm pretty sure, in the 30s maybe. I haven't made a fortune, and my hair is white. I'm old. Still, I wouldn't trade my memories, not for heaps of shining gold, and whenever I get lonesome, I just hold a grand review of the people and the places and the horses that I knew. I can hear the songs and stories. I can feel the campfires blaze as I live again the glories of my grand old cowboy days. Now, it's likely that you can remember a corral at the foot of a hill. And a morning along in September when the air was so quiet and still that the frost lay as light as a feather. The stars had just blinked out and gone. You remember the creak of the leather as you saddled that horse in the dawn? When the glow of that sunset had faded and you reached a corral after night on a hoss that was weary and jaded, so hungry your belt wasn't tight. You felt about ready to weaken. You knowed you'd sure been a long way, but that saddle just kept on a-creaking like it did at the start of the day. There's times you can mind when that saddle was standing up high at the back and you started one whale of a battle when you got your old pony untracked. How you and that hoss stuck together is a thing you can't hardly explain, nor the rattling creak of the leather as it met with the jar and the strain. Well, you've been on a stand in the cedars when the air was so quiet and dead, turn even a fly nor mosquito to buzz and make noise round your head. You looked for wild horses and cattle. The place was as silent as death. But you heard the soft creak of that saddle every time the old horse took a breath. And when you were working the roundups and all day you had been riding hard and there wasn't no chance of you shirking, you was pulled for the second guard. Well, a sad, homesick feeling come creeping as you sung to the cows and the moon, and that saddle just kept on a-creaking right along with the sound of your tune. And there were those days in the summer, those perishing hot summer days, mirages, they kept you gazing, and the dust devils danced far away. You cussed at the thirst and the weather. You rode at a slow jog and trot, and you noticed that somehow the leather creaks different when once it gets hot. Now you're old. Your eyes have grown hollow. Your hair has a tinge of the snow. But there's always these memories that follow from the trails of the dim long ago. There are things that will haunt you forever. And you notice that, strange as it seems, one sound, the soft creak of the leather, weaves through all of your memories and dreams. Bruce Kiskadden.
So a little look behind the scenes here, folks. We have a cowboy hat problem on this show. You can't see people's eyes and faces. And so right now we're going to talk about our hats. And I don't have one, so I don't have to talk. But Johnny's going to talk about his hat first. Where'd you get your hat?
Well, this was Elko. I was in need of a new good hat because otherwise you just wear them into the ground.
Well, that's the thing, is that every year, when we would go to the National Cowboy Poetry Gathering, it was not only, the mecca for us artistically and culturally, but it was also our yearly dose of new gear.
Absolutely.
New pair of pants. If I'm going to be on stage,
Yeah.
maybe I should have a pair of pants.
A new wild rag.
Maybe this hat has been serving me really well. We try to salvage it in the days leading up to it. Maybe we go on over to that great store, Capriola's, and see if they can fix it up for you. And if not, probably need a new hat.
Where'd you get your hat? And
This
do you
one's,
like
I
it?
think, Great Falls. And this is a class, and my dad has been my hero my entire life. I've never tried to be somebody artistically or my personality or anything. So many kids want, their hero is some rock star or an actor. The closest I've ever gotten to wanting to be anybody was my dad. He had this exact same hat. And I was, once again, in the same situation of desperately in need of a hat. And so he brought this one home for me one day. And it's been serving me really well for years and years now.
Well, tell me a little bit more about your pop, because he's here. He's over here. He's right there. I can't see him, but he's right over there. And he seems a little bit like a manager. And a little bit like... No?
No.
Yeah, he's
It's
your
only
man.
because Johnny has reduced him to that with
I'm
his
sorry,
guitar.
Dad.
No.
For my entire life, I was playing with my dad.
Yeah,
He's
I
a
remember.
guitarist,
Yeah.
guitarist, singer-songwriter, poet, photographer, horseman, so many things that I am deeply passionate about originated from him bringing me up with them. And yes, at this point, I'm still very dependent on his presence in my artistic life.
I thought so. So I want to talk a little bit about, or ask a little bit about your musical style and kind of this, is it country, is it jazz, is it old time? I mean, what are you borrowing from?
Right.
What are you doing?
Well, there are really only two kinds of music, good and bad. And we love good music. And we look for it constantly. And we always have our ears open, and we're in a constant state of picking something out of here, of hearing something and really liking it and incorporating it into what we do. I think being brought up in Western culture, in a Western landscape, surrounded by horses and cattle and these cultural things that have shaped us, we can't help but, just like Bob Wills was listening to jazz music, and it was Western swing because they were Western people playing for dances with certain instrumentation, with a certain background, that's how that music was born, that we're very much that same sort of situation, that we really come from a specific place and a specific background, and therefore everything that we do is pretty much cowboy music or Western, or has that influence, even if it's a song in French, or if it's an obscure jazz, just pure jazz from New York City in 1920s, or a mariachi tune or something, because we love it all. But once it goes through our filter, it's us.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I thought of Bob Wills hearing your music. You almost went, oh. And they told Bob Wills never to do that. And Bob Wills said basically,
Pack 'em up, boys.
it's my band. I'll do what I want to. I'll
I
go,
love that
I'll
story.
Go, "Oh."
There's someone who's gonna like it. Pack up your instruments, boys. We're going down the road.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's definitely something that I think happens to Johnny, that when we're really getting rolling, he loves it. He can't help but go, yeah, or ah.
Well, people just want to see people having a good time.
Yeah.
And that's what it is for us so much. We really, really deeply love this. We're an incredibly close family. For many years now, we've all lived in a little bunkhouse, 600 square feet, sleeping in one room, a whole family, playing music at the ends of the beds.
I think that y'all should build your own little cabin off to the other side of that cabin.
We're working on it.
We're working
Get up
on
to
it.
about 1,000 square feet or something.
Hey,
I mean,
it's a great idea. That's just what we're working on right now.
yeah. Oh my goodness, 600 square feet. You got to get out
Or,
of there.
though, when we laugh in there, because we have instruments all along the walls because there's not enough room under our beds. And when we laugh, it all rings in all the instruments, and it's a really pretty beautiful thing,
It
I
is
think.
amazing, really.
We have all the instruments on the walls because there's not enough room under our beds. Pretty good.
This is a song that Johnny and I have just been writing this week, actually. And for seemingly no reason, it is in French, but that'll make more sense in non. Not many French cowboy songs. Moi, toi, nous sommes marchés dans la nuit. Tes bottes sont faites pour monter, mes bottes sont faites pour danser. C'est ce qu'elle m'a dit. C'est ce dont je rêve. Elle a aimé mon petit cheval. Elle pouvait lire les récits dans ses yeux. Ce soulèvement, mon ciel avait des ailes. Mon petit cheval et moi pourrions arriver à elle si vite. Moi, toi, nous sommes marchés dans la nuit. Moi, toi, nous sommes marchés dans la nuit. Tes bottes sont faites pour monter, mes bottes sont faites pour danser. C'est ce qu'elle m'a dit. C'est ce dont je rêve. Elle a aimé mon petit cheval. Elle pouvait lire les récits dans ses yeux. C'est seulement mon ciel avait des ailes. Mon petit cheval et moi pourrions arriver à elle si vite. Moi, toi, nous sommes marchés dans la nuit.
All right, let's do a little tools of the trade. Randy, you're a poet and a reciter of poetry, so there's not a lot of tools associated with that. If you had like a quill pen or something, I could ask you about that. But you're just using your brains and your voice. I'm going to ask you about some of the stuff that you build that is not poetry,
Sure.
but might be art anyway.
Yeah. Well, one thing about the cowboy poetry gatherings, which is where I got to meet these guys, is it's more than just a show. It's really a gathering of Western people and non-Western people who are there to celebrate the cowboy culture and the cowboy lifestyle and the ranching heritage. And so there's more going on than just music and poetry. Oftentimes there's saddle carving seminars, there might be a songwriting seminar, and then there's a display of the gear that is relative to the cowboy culture. Mm-hmm. And this object next to me is a riata, and it's one I made.
With your permission, I'll just touch it.
Yeah.
Just quickly,
Sure.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It's made
just
out
want
of
to show people this.
It's made out of a cowhide, raw hide. That's a before leather is leather. It's a rawhide object, and it's just the green skin taken off the animal. Mm-hmm. And it's a very traditional thing. It's maybe the original catch rope or lasso or lariat, lariata. That's where lariat came from. And long before there were poly fibers and nylon fibers. There was the skins of animals, and ropes were made commonly in all horseback cultures. And this is not exclusively an American thing, but it's anywhere there's a horseback culture, people have made their own gear, and a lot of times it's made from rawhide. And so there's a process you go through to get it so it's malleable, so you can actually do things with it. And this is a very simple object. It's just a 4-strand braid.
But like the most perfect music, it's in its simplicity, it's perfect.
Well, thank you.
If you look at that, if you look closely, it's so even, and it's made with such care and consistency that it has a real life and soul to it.
Well, that's kind. That this is something that at most poetry gatherings, they have a gear show, or they have an art show, or they have these seminars I talked about. And so you can learn to do some of this at the National Cowboy Poetry Gathering. I learned from an incredibly brilliant horseman named Bill Dorrance. He was also a remarkable rawhide braider. And Bill was 55 years older than me, but we were just best of friends. I lived with him off and on for a decade. Between horse contracts, I would go stay with this fella who's a hero to most horsemen and to all rawhide braiders, because he was just remarkably gifted. So he taught me how to do this, and the two of us actually made a film together. We made a 2-hour documentary about his life and about the process of building a riata. It's called 4 Strands of Rawhide. I didn't bring any with me, but something that's available. And so...
Oh, you have something for sale?
Well, pretty much everything's for sale. So.
Yeah.
I'll fast forward a little to a friend of mine who was a Texas cowpuncher named J.B. Allen. And I got to share the stage with him on many occasions, and J.B.'s gone now, but his poems remain. J.B. Allen never wrote a poem till after he was 50 years old, which I think is really good advice for up-and-coming poets. Anyway, people have asked what's cowboy poetry, and it's quite a broad topic, but I like this little description of it that J.B. wrote called The Medicine Keepers. A man might work his whole life with the boys around the wagon and never say 2 words unless it's just hoorah and bragging. But somewhere in the solitude of some old line camp shack, he'll smooth a fruit can label out. And right there on its back, a group of words redeemed from time to last when he moves on. Set down with hurried flourish, for his memory of 'em's gone. Now, the spelling may not be exact, nor commas where they ought, but there amongst those rugged lines a mood is somehow caught. It may be sad and maudlin about a dead or crippled friend, or just a mournful yearning for a way that's bound to end. There's others might be bawdy, full of life and mirth, or tales about some saddle horse that has no peers on earth. There's many through the years been lost or burned or throwed away, but others have survived to give us views of yesterday. And still amongst the working hands, the words come now and then to write a living history of the earth and stock and men. J.B. Allen. I first attended the Cowboy Poetry Gathering in 1986, and it changed my life, literally. It's been one of the grandest adventures I've ever been on. Some of my very best friends I met at the Cowboy Poetry Gathering. The love of my life I met at the Cowboy Poetry Gathering. And that first year, I wrote a poem on the way home from that gathering. And that was almost 40 years ago, but the sentiments hold true today. The poem's called A Rare Find. It's a wonderful thing, somewhat hard to explain, when you meet a new friend on your way. And you know in no time there's a reason behind the ease that your friendship's obtained. For your spirits are one. Though the friendship began only just a few hours ago, the things that you share and the feeling that's there is more lasting and precious than gold. Your talk runs from horses to shoeing to cattle to starting these colts a good way, and before your own eyes, the time has flown by. Adios is the thing you now say. And you sure hate to go. And your feelings, they show on your face as you shake your friend's hand. Still, you know that you're lucky to have this new friend that shares your same love for the land, for horses and cattle, and days in the saddle and nights underneath a clear sky. A sameness in spirit that goes beyond words. We share that, my new friends and I. As I lift up my head from my old canvas bed, I thank the good Lord for his care. And for my new friends, hope we'll soon meet again, for I know we have much more to share. For our spirits are one, though the friendships began only just a few hours ago. The things that we share and the feeling that's there is more lasting and precious than gold.
You've got a record coming out, or is it already out?
It is
This
out
record's
in the world.
What's it called? Where'd you make it? Tell me about the record.
Okie doke. It's called Next Go Around. And it's the first album, it's full-length album that Johnny and I did just completely me and him. We recorded it at the beautiful Doncaster Round Barn there in Twin Bridges, which is just a couple miles away from where we live, just right down the road there. And that's a beautiful, beautiful historic space that was recently renovated. It was a really cool place to record because there was a lot of stories and a lot of soul. It was very inspiring. For the album itself, I did all of that artwork myself. It's all original artwork.
I was going to ask you about that, but you beat me to it. I like kind of cartoon art this way. I don't mean, cartoon is not a bad word to me when it comes to art. You know, I like this like semi-representational, semi-abstract stuff, and you did all this yourself.
I was inspired. There are some great old rodeo posters from the 30s that are a lot of that kind of woodblock style. I love like Joe Mora, his Sweetheart of the Rodeo, with the cowgirl and the roses, the yellow roses around. I found really inspiring. So there's definitely a little flavor of that in what we ended up doing for that artwork.
So we like to do a tools of the trade situation here on the soundstage, and this is a banjo, and there's more banjo jokes than there are banjos in the whole world, hopefully. This one, its neck is too short. What's going on here?
Well, this is a tenor banjo. It's only got 4 strings. And this is a jazz instrument.
Oh.
This is from 1920. It's an Orpheum No. 3. It was Retberg and Lang that had this company. They bought the company at the end of the 1800s there and started making some really fine banjos. And I love this one so much. It was my 18th birthday gift because when I turned 18, I had a decision to make. I'm like, okay, 18, I'm an adult. Gotta do some sort of crazy, rebellious something, you know? Maybe I should take up smoking. Maybe
And
I
smoking,
got it,
people
a
can say
banjo.
whatever.
That's it.
People can say whatever they want, but smoking is cool.
But
Smoking is
banjos
cool.
are cooler. But I love this banjo because, you know, made in New York 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And it came to me in Montana, and it is so Western to me. It has this beautiful carving on the heel here that looks like saddle carving. It has this inlay along the back that looks like a rope. And it has this wonderful, deep, old voice and so many stories to tell that just fit with me so nicely. And although I do a lot of leather work myself now, I did not build this strap, but I did paint it with some little wildflowers on there.
Can you show us how it sounds?
Yeah.
Let us hear how it sounds.
Let's see here.
Oh. Wildwood Flower or Reuben James, both the same tune, right?
Yep. I love this banjo. It also has a beautiful fleur-de-lis on the back of the headstock here. And the fleur-de-lis is sort of special because it's something I share between me and my dad, that when he first met my mom and they fell in love, of course, it was because of my dad's voice. That he was singing and she came up to him after the show and said, "Your voice melts my soul." And he worked at a radio station at the time, and she brought him a bouquet of beautiful iris flowers. And that's what the fleur-de-lis is an iris. And so I always found that to be one of the most romantic, beautiful, musical flowers my whole childhood. So many of our instruments that we have or that he's given me have a fleur-de-lis somewhere.
Now how many biscuits can you eat this morning, this morning? Now how many biscuits can you eat this evening, this evening? Now how many biscuits can you eat? 44 biscuits of ham on meat this morning for breakfast so soon. Now if you see me, look at me this morning, this morning. Now if you see me, look at me this evening, this evening. Now if you see me, look at me. Them legs is better be seen this morning for breakfast so soon. Now bring that coffee good and hot this morning, this morning. Now bring that coffee good and hot this evening, this evening. Now bring that coffee good and hot. Better bring more biscuits out this morning for breakfast so soon. If you get there before I do this morning, this morning. If you get there before I do this evening, this evening. If you get there before I do, saw a hole and pull me through this morning, this evening, so soon. Now how many biscuits can you eat this morning, this morning? Now how many biscuits can you eat this evening, this evening? Now how many biscuits can you eat? 44 biscuits of ham on meat this morning for breakfast so soon. This morning for breakfast right now.
Johnny can eat more biscuits.
I asked you to do one of your own poems today, but mostly you recited poems that other people made up.
You bet, you bet.
And like, I'm not going to stand up in front of people and play a Beatles song worse than the Beatles play it. I've always wanted to play my own stuff, but you see your role a little bit differently in this tradition.
I do. And I do my own material from time to time, but what happened initially in the cowboy poetry world was everybody celebrated the traditional stuff, stuff that was written between 1880 and 1950. And so the first few years, most everybody recited what we consider traditional classic cowboy poetry. But then folks started writing their own, and some people already had been, like Wallace McCrae or Paul Zarzinski or Joel Nelson or, J.B. Allen. And they'd been writing for years, and so they were writing really good stuff. But a lot of folks that jumped on the bandwagon might not have reached that level of quality. And so what I felt like was I loved those classic pieces. All the men who wrote them were gone, and I wanted to keep their voices current, their words current. And so I really do far more classic traditional stuff than I do the things that I've written. Yeah.
I want to talk to you about meter and rhyme and the clickety-clack of reciting poetry that you didn't write. Is it natural for you just to say something in a certain meter and or do you have to think about it?
Well, first of all, I commit all of it to memory, and I recite those poems to myself out loud hundreds of times before I ever recite one from the stage, because there's a feel there that if it's inappropriate for the way the poem is written, then you never get to the heart of the piece, just like good music. For me, I want to recite that piece so that the audience hears how the poem makes me feel on the inside, not with dramatic tricks, but just with pacing and cadence and dynamics. And so there are lots of poems that need a quick pace, and the dynamics are really powerful. There are others that need a slow pace, and the cadence is completely different, and the dynamics are far more subtle. And so what I'm trying to do is search through the piece and find out how can I say it so that the audience gets it, so that they feel it the way it makes me feel. And with another person's writing, you're a little bit safer if the poet is dead. And so nobody's haranguing you afterwards about that's not how I say it. And so I do a lot of dead poets' work. I don't like criticism. But I try really hard to give it the respect it deserves and give it the feel that I think that writer felt when he was writing it. And that's why he chose the words he chose. He chose those words on purpose so that you would feel what he was feeling when he wrote that piece. And I'm just trying to reflect that. I'm just the messenger. I'm not the message. Yeah. Yeah. I'd like to do another piece by one of my favorite Australian poets. Sadly, he's gone now too, but happily his poetry remains. His name was Milton Taylor. He really had a passion for the great Australian traditional bush poetry, but he wrote great contemporary pieces too that went way out beyond the Australian tradition of bush poetry or the cowboy culture. A poem for the world, really, called Memory Lane. He stands by the doorway, and try though he might, he cannot recall should he turn left or right. Puzzled, he pauses alone in the hall, and he wonders why ever he waits there at all. Till a nurse comes to free him from further despair, and gently she guides him to sit in his chair. It's happened before. It will do so again, for he's taking wrong turnings down memory lane. He is ceaselessly combing the files of his mind, searching for answers his brain cannot find, angrily cursing with muttered vexation and finding no comfort to ease his frustrations. Speaking a language that none comprehend, while suffering from damage no doctor can mend. And I watch him and think that it's surely a shame that he's taking wrong turnings down memory lane. I pull up a chair and sit down by his side, and I hope he can't see how I'm hurting inside, and praying that this time somehow he might see his visitor clearly and recognize me. I watch as he struggles with time and with space to give him a clue as he looks at my face. Then he smiles as he tries to remember my name. He's fumbling and stumbling down memory lane. So I think of the old days, the good times we had when I wasn't a stranger, and he was my dad. I choke back my tears, and my heart churns with pain as I watch him struggling and lapsing again. It's an ongoing battle he fights every day, looking for signposts to show him the way, but those signposts are smudged out, covered with stain, all facing the wrong way down memory lane. Well, he whistles his sheepdog, then orders her back, and he gropes for a stock whip he wishes to crack. Not finding it, whispers, "They're all thieves in here. They ransack me room and they pinch all me gear." Well, I'll borrow some horses from Nugget or Roy. I can't stay to talk now. I gotta go, boy. there's a drover's mob waiting somewhere in his brain while he musters the stragglers down memory lane. When my visit is over, I kiss him goodbye, resenting the lost, haunted look in his eye as he looks for the way home he won't find today, with dead ends and cul-de-sacs blocking his way. So I think of the old times I had as a kid, reviving the joys of the good things we did. And I'm thankful that my path is clear-cut and plain, and I don't take wrong turnings down my memory lane. Milton Taylor.
So, Johnny, you play music with your sister.
Yes,
Is
I do.
that cool? Is that weird?
It's
What's
the
it
best
like?
thing ever. Our relationship is the best, just forever. We've just been the best friends. And I remember from the very beginning, because Brigid started with playing music with Dad, and they were great, had it made, and I just loved that. I just thought it was the coolest thing. And I was talking to Brigid, like at one point, I'm like, I want to play in your band. And Brigid's like, because I wasn't really doing anything yet. I'm like,
First you have to play an instrument.
I'll be your tour bus driver. I had to be in on the scene.
What's cool for me is that I'm not just playing with him because he's my brother or because he's all I've got around. That I could search a lifetime to find this good a match musically. I'm just lucky to have found such a great pair.
Well, I think you are lucky. And the thing that I haven't mentioned yet that strikes me is the harmonies. Y'all are really good singing together.
Thank you.
Yeah. And the arrangements are cool. You're not just winging it away. You're not just wailing it away.
We are really big into arrangements. We do all of our own arrangements because since we gather things from so many, different areas, we're very much a product of the folk process.
Yes.
That we'll hear something on the radio or hear something going down the road and it'll be in our heads, but since evidently we don't know about technology, we get home and we play it and it starts being a different thing immediately because we stitch together all of these little bits. We've when we played Ants in Our Pants or whatever, there are 5 or 6 different versions of that song that we've heard throughout our lives, and we liked this part and we liked this part, and it all comes together. We're 2 people. We're 2 voices, but we want to sing songs that have a lead singer and background singers. So
what if there's a horn
we have
section?
to figure out how, or we have a lot of music we love that has a full horn section, and we have to figure out how to get that same drive out of a fiddle and a guitar.
And you sing it. You sing the lead, Brigid, and then you sing the echo as well, because there's nobody else sitting there.
To create
there's nobody else there
2
to do it.
personalities,
Right.
to have that really confident, that great, cool jazz singer in the front. But then Johnny and I always love the little guys in the background going, "Ain't my pants." So they're also the ones that are going to be adding Bob Wills style, extra little things throughout the whole song that kind of give it this extra excitement and
secondary
energy.
characters.
Well, y'all are good players.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. Friends, I don't want it to end because I'm having too much fun, but it's got to end sometime, and now is that time. I got Johnny Reedy here, I got Brigid Reedy, I got Randy Rieman. They've come over here for you, and I appreciate y'all being here today.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
It's been amazing.
Well, we're going to do a neat old fiddle tradition for you now called Fiddlesticks. And it seems like a nice homage to my great friend and teacher of many, many years, Mike Williams, here in Helena. Here's an old-time fiddle tune for you, Mike.